Hello, guys, and welcome to the third episode of my Delphi programming series here on YouTube. And today we're going to have a look at variables and variable scope. So you might remember that in the previous video, I mentioned that you can declare variables. They have different data types, but there are different places where you can declare the variable itself. And I didn't go into much detail, but this is the video, and that's what this video is for. So let's get right into it. So just a quick review of how you declare a variable. You give the variable a name, and this can be anything as long as it doesn't have a space in. Then that is followed by a colon, which is followed by the data type. And we learned lots and lots of data types in the previous video. Now, I showed you that you can declare the variable under the private section, under the public section, as well as under the var section. But I didn't go into much detail. So now I'm going to explain to you what the difference is. And the difference is variable scope. Now, variable scope simply means whether the application knows the variable exists in a certain place. And this is a bit confusing, but I'll show you in code later how this works. So you have two different types of variable scopes or variable durations. You have local and you have global. It's as simple as that. And this might be self-explanatory. So local variables are declared under the var section. And I'll give practical demonstrations of this. And global variables are declared under private or public. So these are the three places you can declare variables. It's only those three. And you can choose which one. Now, the method scope is when the variable is declared in the var section of a method itself. And remember, a method is any piece of code that does something. You don't have to worry too much about it for now. I'll explain it better with code. And then you have class scope. Now, class scope is the private and public declarations, and those are accessed by the entire class. So again, you don't have to worry about classes and methods and stuff right now if you're just starting out. For now, just know that it means that if you declare a variable under private section, that means the entire application has access to it. Okay, so the entire application knows this variable exists. It knows its name, it knows its value. So it is a global variable. It's accessed everywhere. It is known all around the entire application. Where local variables, you know, the application, certain parts of the application knows this variable. It knows, oh, it is here and it's only accessible by this. And, it's a bit of it's a shy variable. It doesn't want to be known. Okay, so they are only known by certain pieces of code and not the entire application. And then you also have unit scope. Now, unit scope is essentially the same thing. It means the entire application has access to it, but specifically if it is declared under the implementation section. And this is with reference to constants. And we haven't gotten yet familiar with constants yet, but I'll go into those later. So that is enough theory for now. Let's do some code. So to save us some time, I've already declared a few variables here. I've declared a global variable as a string under the private section. I'm going to leave public out for now. I've declared one in this button event handler as local variable 1 and local variable 2 in a different button. So this is what I've got at the moment. It's just a normal label. So let's see how we can, do things with these variables depending on their class. So let's go to the first one. Let's give the local variable that this one has. Notice it's declared under var in the method. And if you didn't know, this is called a method. There's anything that has a begin and end is a method. And if you go back here, method scope is under var. So that's why the var is there. So you give your variable a name, colon, I declared it as a string, and now let's give it a value. So let's say local var 1. Let's make that, just say it button 1, okay? And let's do the same with this one. Local var 2, that equals just button 2. Okay, so you can follow along if you want, it's just 2 buttons. Now let's give this variable, this global variable, a value. But let's not do it in any of the buttons. We're going to learn about a new type of event, and it's called an onActivate event. So whenever you run the application and this form shows and it loads into the RAM, this onActivate event handler will run. So you simply click on the form, or you can do the form create, it doesn't matter, as long as it is a event on the form itself. So the onActivate or the onCreate is there. So it doesn't matter. Let's do the form create. And notice how we can access that top variable, the global variable. And let's make that equal to global variable. There we go. Now let's do some things with these variables. Let's say when we want to click button 1, this should change the label's caption. And let's set it equal to local variable 1. Okay, that's pretty easy. Let's see if it works. So we're going to click button 1 and it should display button 1. There we go, it works. Now let's do button 2. Let's say label 1.caption equals and then local variable 2. Let's see if that works. So we're pressing button 2, it should display button 2. And it does. Perfect. Now let's say when we want to press button 1, we want to display this variable as well. So let's try that. Let's say label 1.caption equals, and it's called local variable 2. So let's check. Oh, it's giving me this red squiggly line, and notice it says undeclared identifier. Now, what on earth does that mean? Notice how we said that these local variables under var can only be accessed by their methods. So what that means is that only this piece of code has access to the variables you declare in them. So when we try and access this method's variable, it's giving me an error because it doesn't know what is local variable 2. It's undeclared. It doesn't exist. So the application gets confused and it throws an error. So we can't do that. We literally just can't access that variable. It's impossible. So that's a demonstration of local variables. It's only local to this method, this variable. I can't access it in here because this is an entirely different method. And the same with this one. I can't access local variable. Let's say label 1 dot caption equals, and it's local variable. See, it gives me local variable 2, but not 1. It's going to give me an error. Look. So you can't access a variable if it is declared in a method and you want to access it from a different method. You can't. Later, we're going to learn how you can, with some more difficult, intermediate level code, how you can access these type of variables with code. But we'll do that at a later time. But now we've declared this global variable. So can we use that? Let's say we want to display that as a caption. So let's say global, and there it is. It works. I'm not getting an error, so let's quickly check. And it says global variable. Nice. Okay, so notice how this variable was declared under the private section. And we said that the private and public sections are global, meaning they have class scope. So they are available across the entire application. So it doesn't matter whether you're going to want to try and access it in this method, this button, or in this button. Look, we can do this. Label 1 dot caption equals, and let's say global. There you go. I can access it. No problem whatsoever. So any global variable declared over here is accessible by any other part of the application. Okay, but you can't access individual local variables from any other place. Now, we did mention this other type of variable called a constant, which is declared under the implementation section, and it has a unit scope. Now, let me just quickly tell you what a constant is. Now, a constant is a variable, but it is a special type of variable. They are global variables that don't change, meaning their values throughout the entire application will never change. You can't change them. Okay, so you can't access them and do something like this, for example, where you change their value with a method. You can't. So constants are declared under the implementation section by typing const like this, and then right below that, you can type the name of a constant. In Delphi, it's good practice to name your constants differently. Usually, they teach you to do it in all caps like this with an underscore between like different parts of the name. And this time, instead of using a colon like with a regular variable, we're using a normal equal sign because this thing will never change. So this will be true. This will equal to this, and it will never change. So that's a way to remember it. And then you can just, if it's a string, it'll be single quotes. If it is a character, it'll just be like that. If it is an integer, it'll be something like that, or a float, something like that. Um, Anything you want. I'm just going to use, for simplicity's sake, just a regular string. There we go. So now let's see how we can use constants. Now, they are global variables, so we should be able to access them through these. And let's say global label one dot caption, and then let's say equals con, and then there it is. And notice how it displays its value because it'll never change. So there we go. Let's remove this and run the application. And it should just say constant. And it does. So notice how you can access this through every part, even this first part we did in the form create. So we can just say, let's call global var, let's call it something entirely different. Let's make that equal to the con variable. And we can remove this and notice something cool happen now. Now when we try to display global var, it'll display constant. There we go. So that's a quick, brief overview of the different types of scopes you get and where you can declare your variables. Public is something we'll get into at a later stage, but just know that this is also a global variable. But for the sake of grade 10 to grade 11, this would always be known or accepted to be a global variable. And something like this will be accepted to be a local variable. And it can be examinable to use certain types of variables. The exam paper might specifically say you need to make a local variable called this and this and this, or you need to make a global variable called this and that. So it is important to know the difference and how you can use them. So I do hope this video was of help to you. Please like and subscribe and leave me a comment and do ask if you have questions. I'll be glad to reply to your comments, and I really do hope that this video cleared this up for you. And goodbye.